Did we do it? We did do it. Okay. All right. Let's go. All right, first things first. The bottom center of the screen says that we have beaten... Let's turn this down just a bit. The bottom center of the screen says that we've beaten 48 games in 2024 and 495 since we started doing this in 2020. Those numbers are lies. We've now beaten 49 games in 2024 and 496 since we started doing this. Let's go. All right, let's talk about the ups and downs of Senua Saga Hellblade 2. Overall, I think this is an excellent game. It is very much like the first one, but with a few key differences. So I think it's important going into this game, it's important going into this game to understand what it is, and more importantly, what it is not. This is not a traditional video game. This is not an RPG. This is not an action adventure. This is a narrative-focused, visually stunning narrative. It's a narrative. This is much closer to a walking sim than it is to an action RPG. It's not a walking sim. I'm not saying that it is, but it has some of that DNA. The only thing keeping it from being a walking sim, there's two things. Some very light puzzles, exploration puzzles, and some very bare bones, on rails combat sections that are a step above QTEs. They're not the combat isn't quite just a series of QTEs, but it's like one step above that. It is not full focused, full range combat. You don't go out and grind levels in this game. You don't go out and choose who you want to fight. The game puts an enemy in front of you, and you hit the buttons at the right time until the enemy is dead. It is more like a QTE than it is like Souls-like combat. Again, it's not a QTE, but it's one level above that. So, really, what this game is it's a narrative adventure, walking sim-esque, puzzle exploration kind of game. It's technically got puzzles, but they're very simple. It's technically got combat, but it's very simple. And here's the thing. That's what the first game was like, too. And the first game was amazing for two reasons. Number one, it is visually incredible. The first game, when it came out, was like the best games had ever looked. And the second reason is that the story is completely unique and totally surreal in an incredible way. The story is amazing. So those are the two tentpoles that really prop up this series. And we're talking about the first game, is the amazing story and the amazing graphics. All of that is true with this game too. The reason that this game is as engaging as it is not the combat. It's not the puzzles. If it was just that, this game wouldn't be good. It is the amazing story, which I believe it is still continues to be amazing, and the incredible graphics. And again, just like its predecessor, this is maybe the best looking game I've ever played. I mean, from a purely visual standpoint, it looks amazing. It has a tech demo feel to it, because it looks like it's kind of all about the graphics. It's not, because the story is incredible, right? It's not the Matrix tech demo. You remember that thing on PS5 that like looked really good, but it was not really a video game? It's not that, because that game didn't have a story, right? That didn't have a story arc. That was just like, hey, look how pretty everything is. This is like, hey, look how pretty everything is, but it also has an incredible story. So I think people liked the first game because it was unique and it was new. And during the time that it came out, there wasn't as much of a negative stigma as some people have on like walking sim type games. And so I think it did well. I haven't read any reviews, but I've always heard good things from critics that people liked that game. I haven't read any of the reviews for this game, but I have a sneaking suspicion that people aren't going to like it as much because it's a different time. And the way that this game was hyped up initially, I think a lot of people that maybe didn't play the first game, or maybe they even did play it, but they've kind of forgotten how simple it was, might be expecting a lot more from this game than there is here. But it's important to understand that this game accomplishes exactly what it sets out to do. Yes, it's only... how long? 6.5 hours? It's not a long game. But it is, for the tightly focused narrative game that it is, it does everything that it sets out to do extremely well. Like I said, the visuals are maybe the best I've ever seen in a video game. The story is not the best I've ever seen in a video game, but it is A tier for sure. And and I have to also add, just on this is a smaller thing, but it's also very important considering I played this on launch day. It came out yesterday, so it took us 2 days to beat it, but we started as soon as it came out. I haven't found a bug one in this game, and that is incredibly novel. I play a lot of games at launch now, and almost always there's at least a few bugs. And especially with something that's really technically ambitious, there are bugs almost always all over the place. And they can be anywhere from mildly annoying to game-breaking. And especially nowadays, the games that I play at launch are just riddled with bugs a lot of the times. And sometimes they're good in spite of all that, like Another Crab's Treasure is a good example of that. And sometimes they break the game, and they make the game this bad. Like, I don't know. I won't throw any bad names out there, but there are some of those games. This game doesn't have... I didn't see a whiff of a bug. No frame drops. No characters getting stuck in the environment. No weird camera angle garbage. No freezing of the game and having to quit out. I never had to load from a checkpoint because something weird happened that I couldn't explain and wasn't supposed to happen. It was technically pristine. I don't know that I've ever seen a game as technically pristine as this one at launch. And considering how ambitious this game is technically, that is a phenomenal achievement just on its own. So that's worth mentioning. As far as criticisms go, I don't have much, because again, this game doesn't really at its core, all as visually impressive and like firework wowing this game is like tries to be. It's really very simple at its core. It is made to look pretty and tell a beautiful story, and it really doesn't do much else. There's no levels, there's no gear, there's no inventory, there's no health bar even. This game does none of that stuff. And honestly, I think it's better for it, because it would just be a different kind of game. It would just be another Ubisoft open world bullshit game. Actually, I like those, but you know what I'm saying? It would be more generic if it had... Like, can you imagine like playing Senua's Sacrifice if like it's exactly what it is, but then also you like find iron ore on the ground and you collect 3 of them and you turn them into a blacksmith and it upgrades your attack by 5. Like, it doesn't fit in this kind of game, right? So for what this game is trying to do, it's pretty perfect. The biggest thing it could have fumbled would have been the technical angle, and it nailed it. I mean, the fact that this game is running on a Series S and I never even saw a frame stutter is extremely impressive. But I will say this. I played this on Games Pass, right? So I'm already paying the monthly price for this. So I didn't have to pay for it separately. I did look it up, and it's $50 retail. I I think this game is actually even slightly shorter than the first one. And so I do think that now this is not something I take into account when I look at rankings, because when I rank a video, it's just a video game. It's really just based on how happy it makes me. It doesn't matter how much I paid for it. It doesn't matter how long it's been out. Those things. I'm just looking at it at face value. So I'm not going to take this into account. But I can see a point of criticism in that the people that made this game probably justified the price because it took a long time to make and it was probably pretty expensive to make. This game's probably a lot more expensive per hour of game time than your average game. And so they probably felt justified paying $50. But if I'm going into this with knowing nothing, just based on the trailer that I saw, I didn't see all the trailers, but the big gameplay reveal of like 2 years ago. And then I sat down and played this game for 6 hours and it was over and it's nothing more than a narrative experience, I might be a little miffed. I think probably this, regardless of how much it costs to make the game, I think this is more of a $40 game. I think $39.99 is fair for this game. I don't know if $49.99 is. So, and not only is that maybe a little overpriced, just logistically, but I think it also sends a different message. If you're buying a $50 game, you expect a certain level of gameplay. And this game doesn't really have a lot of gameplay. It's just not there. So, you wouldn't spend... There are 6-hour games out there that are like Detroit Become Human or something, And actually, that game's a little bit longer and more involved than this. It's fine. I don't want to get too hung up on the price, but I can see where some people might think that $50 is a little bit high for a 6-hour experience like this. This is not a AAA game. It looks like one, but at its core, it's not actually a AAA game. This is a AA game. It's the AAA games, based on the definition that I understand, that's a game that kind of has it all. That you can really get lost in for a long time. I don't know of any games that have touted the AAA moniker that you can beat in 6 hours. So I wouldn't call this a AAA game. This is more of a AA experience, and anyone that's expecting a AAA experience is going to be disappointed, or at the very least surprised. Anyway, in summary, I think that this game is very good. I think there's a couple of questions left to ask. I need to know how I'm going to rank this game. And the first question I'm going to ask myself when I think about where I'm going to rank a game like this is how did it do compared to its predecessor? I don't know the answer to that yet. I haven't given that a ton of thought, but the original ranked pretty well. I think it's in the 160s or something. And technically, I think this game looks better. And the fact that I don't ask, did it look better for the time? If that's a selling point of this game, I'm just looking at it at face value. And I think this game definitely looks better. Like, the technical performance is superior. I think that the game does a better job of telling a more immersive story. The original tells a great story, and it is incredibly immersive, but there's a lot of quiet time in that game, in the first game, where you're just kind of doing puzzles, and there's a pacing. It's not an issue, but the pacing in that game is quite slow, and I think a lot of people that didn't beat it, that's probably why. Because there are just points where it's like, okay, there's not really anything happening. I just have to walk around and search for these runes, and it's maybe a little boring to some people. This game does a better job of minimizing that, I think. There are still some areas that you kind of just have to walk around, but there's always something happening while you're doing that. The voices are they're not just chattering, at you. They are helping you solve the puzzle. They are giving you additional context for what's going on. There are things happening in the environment that are engaging, that you're interacting with. It's not just like see the puzzle. Like you're switching things around in the environment. It's like puzzle solving, It's just more engaging and immersive. This is an incredibly immersive game. It's very, very immersive. So, again, I don't really have any real criticism. So I think, to put a pin in that, I think I might rank this game higher. The only real question is going to be like, the game had some really interesting story twists in the beginning in the first game that this game has now built off of, but there's nothing really that happened in this game story-wise where I was like, oh, wow, that changes everything. Maybe one or two, but I feel like that happened several times in the first game. So, but if you're not dealing with a new IP, it's just harder to do that. Again, I'll just leave it here. Ultimately, I really did love this game. I think it's I think it's very, very good at what it sets out to do, and that's really all I can ask from a game like this. And that is exactly what I was hoping for. You know, this is not my expectations being subverted. This is exactly the experience I was hoping it to be. I actually think that 6 hours is perfect for... Oh, that's the other thing I was going to talk about real quick. I could see how a lot of people would complain that this game is too short, especially for the price, which that part I might agree with. But in general, I disagree wholeheartedly. I think a game like this if this game was 9 hours long instead of 6, I think it would be too long, unless they're adding something significant to the gameplay. But they're not going to do that. That's not what this game is. So I think if people that are like upset, if people are upset, oh, this whole game only takes, I beat this game in an afternoon. You don't want to play this game for 10 hours. Eventually the story arc just would be bloated and you'd get bored of the puzzle solving. I would. This is not a 10-hour game. And I think that anyone that was hoping something like this would be double-digit hours maybe doesn't realize what they're asking for, because you're not just asking for longer game at that point. You're asking for more game within that. And I think for what this kind of game is, a narrative-driven experience should not be longer than 6 or 7 hours, maybe 8. It's actually, this is very similar to a game I recently played in some weird ways. It's very similar to a game I recently played called Harold Halibut, which is also important for the very same reasons. It looks very pretty and it has a really great story. It's the exact 2 reasons that this game is good, right? But that game took 9 hours to beat, and it was boring because of that. If that game had been 4 hours instead, it would have been great, probably, but it was too long. It wore out its welcome. It didn't know when to quit when packing stuff in, you know. And again, it's a very different kind of game as far as like what the story is about and what the tone of it is. But really, at its core, it's exactly the same kind of game. It's a narrative-driven experience that's supposed to. Part of the thing that pulls you forward is how great it looks. And I think if this game had been 9 hours, I would have started to get bored. And I can see from the achievements in Xbox that people did anyway, even only being 6 hours long. You know, I got to the end, there's only 2% or something got that far. And now it's only day 2, but still, like, there are people that probably planned to beat this game in 2 days, just like I did, that didn't, because they probably got bored during some puzzle. But maybe they didn't know what to expect. Maybe they didn't know what they were in for. Anyway, I loved this game. I thought it was great. I don't really have any serious critiques outside of the price point. It's just really a question of whether they were able to top their original game, and I don't know the answer to that yet. I'll have to think about it, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. All right, last order of business: Hellblade Senua Saga. It's been a delight, but we are now going to delete you from our console and never play you again. Bye. Thank you. Appreciate all the hard work.